This story is titled, My Girlfriend Wanted Open Relationship to Enjoy Other Guys. I didn't hesitate and agreed. Then she found her belongings in the trash. Subreddit. My name is Marcus, and I'm 38 years old. What I'm about to tell you might sound unbelievable, but every word of it is true. My wife wanted an open relationship and immediately jumped into hooking up with other guys. Then she completely lost her mind when our neighbor, the same woman she'd always claimed to hate, started flirting with me. When I told her, I'm just doing what you wanted, she shot back with, that's different. It doesn't count if it's someone we know. So I stopped arguing with her and decided to play the long game instead. I let her have her fun while I quietly secured everything important and carefully planned my exit strategy. Here's exactly how it all went down. I'm a long-haul delivery driver, and I've been working cross-country routes for the past 14 years. It's good money if you don't mind the solitude and long stretches of highway. Until recently, I thought my marriage to Lisa, who's 33, was decent enough. We've been together for 12 years total, married for 9 of those years. The foundation of our life together seemed solid. I had bought my house before we even got married, so we had that stability going for us. The house is a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom place built in the early 2000s. I paid $180,000 for it back in 2013, and with the current market conditions, it's now worth close to $420,000. That equity represented years of hard work and smart financial planning on my part, and it was something I took genuine pride in. When Lisa and I first got together, she seemed to genuinely appreciate the stability I could offer. I'd be gone for days at a time driving my routes, then come home for a few days of rest. We had developed a system that worked well for both of us. She had her job at a marketing firm and handled most of the cooking when I was home. Meanwhile, I took care of all the repairs around the house and maintained the yard work. It was a simple, practical arrangement that made sense given my unpredictable schedule on the road. Our life together wasn't what you'd call Instagram-worthy according to today's social media standards, but it felt solid and real to me. We'd go camping up in the mountains during my time off, hang out with our small circle of friends, and spend quiet weekends watching movies together. Just normal, everyday couple stuff that I found genuinely satisfying. I thought we were completely on the same page about what marriage was supposed to mean: partnership, loyalty, and building something meaningful together over time. Then everything started to shift when Lisa's sister Brittany moved back to town after her second divorce. Brittany is 40 years old and has been divorced twice already, always chasing after some new guy or exotic life experience. She's exactly the kind of woman who constantly posts inspirational quotes on social media, while her own life is a complete train wreck behind the scenes. Suddenly, Brittany was at our house constantly, practically living there some weeks. She filled Lisa's head with endless stories about exotic vacations, spontaneous weekend flings, and this whole philosophy about how life is too short to be tied down to one person. I wasn't blind to what was happening. I could see the changes taking place in Lisa in real time. She went from being genuinely content with our life together to suddenly acting like she was missing out on some grand adventure that everyone else was having. Lisa started following all these lifestyle influencers on Instagram, women in their 30s and 40s who seemed to have suspicious amounts of free time and money. They were constantly posting photos from Costa Rica or some other exotic destination, promoting this idea that traditional relationships were somehow limiting your potential. I started noticing subtle but significant changes in Lisa's behavior and attitude after she got sucked into this online world. At first, it was just small stuff that I tried to brush off. She'd make complaints about our boring routine or drop comments about how I wouldn't understand certain things because I was just a delivery driver. It stung, honestly. Like suddenly the job that paid for everything we had, including the lifestyle she enjoyed, was something to look down on. She'd roll her eyes when I talked about practical things like saving for retirement or planning home improvements. Things that I thought were normal, responsible adult conversations. She also started making these weird, pointed comments about other couples we knew. She'd say things like, "Did you know Tom and Karen are in therapy? Apparently they're working through some issues about sexual compatibility." She'd just drop these little bombs during dinner conversations like they were totally normal topics to discuss. It felt like she was testing the waters for something, though I couldn't quite put my finger on what at the time. 4 months ago, Lisa quit her job without even discussing it with me first. I came home exhausted from a 16-hour drive and she announced, "I need to find myself, Marcus. This marketing job is killing my soul. I'm meant for more than this." I was too tired to get into a full argument right then, so I just asked the reasonable questions. What was her plan? Another job? Going back to school? Some kind of concrete next step? I need some time to explore my options, she said, like she was a recent college graduate instead of a 33-year-old woman with real bills and responsibilities. I've been thinking about something that allows me to express myself creatively. Express yourself on somebody else's dime, I thought, but I managed not to say it out loud. We had enough money in savings to float her for a while, and I figured maybe some time off would help her reset and figure out what she actually wanted. But apparently, exploring her options meant scrolling through Instagram for hours and meeting Brittany for endless brunches while I was busting my ass on the road. Our previous agreement about splitting household responsibilities completely went out the window. I'd come home from multi-day hauls to find a dirty house, no food prepared, and an attitude from Lisa whenever I mentioned it. The kitchen would have dishes piled up in the sink, laundry would be sitting untouched for days, and the general state of the house looked like a tornado had blown through it. Meanwhile, she'd somehow found both the time and money to buy new clothes and get her nails done twice a week. The worst part wasn't even the physical mess I'd walk into. It was the feeling of walking into my own house and feeling like an unwelcome visitor. I'd come through the door after days on the road, exhausted and looking forward to some basic comfort at home, and Lisa would be on the phone with Brittany or some new friend she'd made. She'd give me this look like, "Oh, you're back," before immediately returning to her conversation as if I was interrupting her real life. It was like I had become an inconvenience in my own home. When I finally worked up the nerve to ask if she could at least load the dishwasher while I was gone, she actually said, "Housework is beneath me now, Marcus. It's so restrictive to my growth." I couldn't believe those words came out of her mouth. This was the same woman who used to take pride in maintaining our home together. And now, basic cleanliness was somehow holding back her personal development. I made the conscious decision not to make a big deal out of it. Instead, I just started doing everything myself. Cooking my own meals when I was home, cleaning the entire house, doing my laundry while working 65+ hours a week on the road. But I also started checking out mentally from the relationship. I spent more time hanging out with my buddies at the garage where we work on project cars as a hobby. I've got this 1969 Mustang that I've been restoring for years, and there's something incredibly therapeutic about working on an old engine. With cars, you don't have to guess what's wrong with them. You diagnose the problem methodically, you fix it with the right tools and parts, and then it works again. Everything is logical and straightforward. If only relationships were that simple and predictable. As time went on, the fights between Lisa and me became more frequent and more intense. I'd point out that she wasn't contributing anything to our household or relationship, and she'd immediately call me controlling and financially abusive. I'd bring up our original agreement about shared responsibilities, and she'd say that agreements naturally evolve over time, and I needed to get with the times. Whenever I asked about her job search or any concrete plans for her future, she'd accuse me of not supporting her journey of self-discovery. Then, there I was, getting home from a particularly grueling 4-day haul, thinking it was just going to be another typical Wednesday evening. Lisa asked me to sit down with her in the living room, and she had that specific look on her face, the one where someone's about to drop a major bomb on your life. I could feel my stomach starting to tense up, but I kept my expression neutral and waited for whatever was coming. "Marcus," she started, slowly swirling a glass of wine in her hand. "I've been doing a lot of thinking about us lately." "Uh-huh," I replied, feeling my stomach do a little flip, but I managed to keep my face completely neutral. "I think it's time we explored," she finally said with a straight face, like she was discussing weekend dinner plans. "Explore?" I asked, keeping my voice even and controlled. "Explored what exactly? National parks?" She gave me this impatient sigh like I was being deliberately obtuse. "No, Marcus. With other people. An open marriage." My brain completely short-circuited for a moment. This was Lisa. My Lisa. The same woman who once got genuinely jealous when I casually mentioned that a female truck stop cashier had been particularly friendly during a fuel stop. Now she was sitting here casually pitching the idea of sleeping with other people like she was suggesting we try a new restaurant downtown. "Wait, are you serious?" was all I could manage to get out. "Yes, completely serious," she said, with this weird, artificial brightness in her voice. "I think it could be really liberating for both of us. Bring a new spark back into our relationship. We both get to experience new things, meet new people, and there are no secrets between us. It's all above board and honest. This marriage feels so restrictive right now, Marcus. I want to explore other people." My first reaction was pure anger, followed immediately by this strange, cold calm that settled over me. So this was what all the Instagram scrolling and Brittany's influence had been building toward. So you want to sleep with other guys? I said flatly. You want to cheat without having to call it cheating. It's not just that, she stammered, clearly not expecting such a direct response. It's about freedom and growth for both of us. I want to see other men, more interesting men. Interesting, I repeated slowly. Like that personal trainer you and Brittany keep talking about? Her face immediately flushed red. Bingo! I'd hit the nail on the head. She'd been mentioning this Tyler guy for weeks now, how inspiring his journey was, how he'd quit his boring corporate job to become a fitness instructor, how he was really connecting with his authentic self. Authentic self? Whatever the hell that was supposed to mean. We argued for about an hour, hitting all the usual talking points. She wanted new experiences and adventure. I pointed out that wedding vows actually meant something. She said I was stuck in outdated patriarchal thinking. I reminded her that she used to claim she valued loyalty and commitment. Round and round we went, getting nowhere. She kept using all these buzzwords that sounded like she'd swallowed a self-help book whole. Evolving relationship models, ethical non-monogamy, expanding our capacity for connection. Meanwhile, I was thinking about practical things like mortgage payments, STD risks, and what this would actually mean for our day-to-day life. Finally, I just stopped arguing and made a strategic decision to play the long game instead. Okay, Lisa, I said calmly. Lisa blinked in surprise. Okay? Just, okay? Yeah, I said. If that's what you want, let's do it. She looked like someone who had prepared for an all-out war and suddenly found the enemy surrendering without a fight. She seemed suspicious but also relieved at the same time. Perfect. Let her think she'd won this round. That would make my next moves much easier to execute. Lisa's shocked expression quickly morphed into a smug smile, like she'd won some kind of victory. Wow, I didn't think you'd be so open-minded about this, she said, practically bouncing with excitement. This is going to be amazing for us, Marcus. We should set some ground rules, I nodded, keeping my voice steady. What were you thinking? She jumped right in without hesitation, clearly having thought about this extensively. Well, we should be honest about who we're seeing. No lying or sneaking around behind each other's backs. And we should still prioritize each other, like having regular date nights and stuff to maintain our connection. Makes sense, I said, continuing to play along. And maybe we start with just casual things, nothing serious or emotional with other people. I just kept nodding along, watching her lay out this elaborate framework that she'd obviously been planning in her head for weeks. She probably had the personal trainer guy already lined up and waiting. I'd noticed he'd been liking all her Instagram posts lately. Pretty subtle stuff there. When were you thinking of starting? I asked, genuinely curious about her timeline. She looked away slightly, unable to make direct eye contact. Well, there's actually a gym social thing tomorrow night. Of course there was. How convenient. Go for it, I said simply. I've got a 4-day haul starting tomorrow anyway, so the timing works out perfectly. She looked confused and seemed almost disappointed at how easy this conversation was going. She'd clearly been rehearsing arguments and counterpoints in her head, probably expecting me to fight much harder against this whole idea. Maybe she even wanted me to fight for her more. The next 8 weeks were absolutely wild to watch unfold. Lisa dove headfirst into her new lifestyle with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been waiting their entire life for this opportunity. Whenever she'd text me updates about her adventures or ask how I was handling things, I'd respond with simple "okay" or "have fun" messages. I never asked for details about what she was doing or who she was with, which seemed to drive her absolutely crazy that I wasn't showing any jealousy or possessiveness. It was like watching someone live out a fantasy they'd convinced themselves was sophisticated and evolved, when in reality, it was just wanting to have sex with someone new while keeping your financial and emotional security blanket safely at home. Meanwhile, I was quietly putting my own house in order behind the scenes. I called my bank and discreetly set up a new account at a completely different bank across town. I started moving small amounts of money over regularly. Nothing large enough to be considered suspicious or to trigger any automatic alerts, but enough to steadily build up a safety net for myself. I also began documenting everything that was happening in our marriage in a password-protected file on my laptop. Every conversation, every fight, every time she stayed out all night, every dollar she spent from our joint account on her new lifestyle, it all went into the file with dates and details. During one of my longer hauls, I scheduled a consultation with a divorce attorney. I figured it was better to understand my options and protect myself legally, even if I wasn't ready to pull that trigger yet. I also stepped up my gym routine significantly during this time. I started doing heavy compound lifts and added serious cardio to my workout regimen. Over the course of those 2 months, I lost 18 pounds of fat and started gaining noticeable muscle mass. I began taking much better care of myself overall, eating better, sleeping more consistently when I was home, focusing on my physical and mental health. I figured if I was potentially going to be single again, I might as well become the best possible version of myself. There was something empowering about taking control of the things I actually could control while everything else in my life felt chaotic. The attorney I consulted was named Kevin, and he'd clearly seen cases like mine many times before. "Classic situation," he said after I explained everything that was happening. "She wants to have her cake and eat it too. The good news is that your house is premarital property, so that's protected. No kids makes the whole process much cleaner, legally speaking." Kevin was this no-nonsense guy in his 50s who had been divorced twice himself, which ironically enough seemed to make him better at his job. He said his own personal experiences helped him spot the patterns and warning signs because he'd lived through them firsthand. "Women like your wife," he said, leaning back in his office chair, "they think they've got it all figured out. They think they can have the freedom and excitement of being single while maintaining the financial security and stability of being married. But it doesn't work that way in reality." He advised me to keep documenting everything, avoid confronting Lisa directly about what I suspected, and continue letting her dig her own grave. "Just keep your head down and let her show her true colors," he said. "The evidence will speak for itself when the time comes." I followed his advice religiously. I kept my head down, let Lisa have her fun and adventures, and quietly continued preparing for what I knew was going to be inevitable. About 3 months into this whole arrangement, the other shoe finally dropped in a big way. There's this neighbor of ours named Jessica who lives 2 doors down from us. She's 32 years old, incredibly attractive, and has that fitness instructor body type, always wearing yoga pants and athletic wear that shows off her figure perfectly. For years, Jessica had been what Lisa considered too friendly with me, and Lisa had made plenty of jealous comments about it over the years. Jessica would sometimes chat with me when I was working on my truck in the driveway. Just simple, innocent stuff about cars, neighborhood gossip, nothing inappropriate. I'd always kept our interactions strictly neighborly out of respect for my marriage, even though I could tell Jessica was interested in something more. Jessica was single, had no kids, and taught fitness classes at a popular studio downtown. She was exactly the kind of woman who would normally be completely off-limits to a married man, but apparently the rules had changed. One Saturday afternoon, I was outside changing the oil in my truck when Jessica came walking over to where I was working. "Hey there, neighbor," she said with a knowing smirk, casually leaning against my toolbox. "Haven't seen you around much lately." "Been on the road a lot," I replied, wiping my hands clean on an old rag. She looked absolutely incredible. Tank top, shorts, the whole package that would make any man take notice. She gave me a smile that was different from her usual friendly neighbor smile. This one was more deliberate, more intentional. "So I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that you and Lisa have some kind of arrangement now." I looked up at her, genuinely curious. "Where'd you hear that?" "Small neighborhood," she shrugged casually. "Lisa's been seen around town with that guy a few times. It's pretty obvious what's happening. I was just curious if it goes both ways." Before I could even formulate a response to that loaded question, Lisa's car pulled into our driveway. Her face when she saw Jessica talking to me was absolutely priceless. Pure panic washed over her features, and she practically ran over to where we were standing. "Marcus, what's going on here?" she demanded, slightly out of breath. Jessica smiled innocently. "Just saying hi to Marcus, like always." "Right," Lisa said, her eyes darting nervously between Jessica and me. "Marcus, can I talk to you inside for a minute?" The moment we were through the front door, she absolutely exploded. "What the hell was that? You and Jessica out there?" "We were just talking," I said calmly, maintaining the same tone I'd used for years during our innocent neighbor conversations. "Like we've done for years." "Don't play dumb with me," she snapped. "She was practically undressing you with her eyes out there." I raised an eyebrow. "And that's a problem because it's Jessica," she practically shrieked. "The woman I've been telling you for years has a thing for you." I leaned casually against the kitchen counter. "I thought we had an open marriage now. Isn't that exactly what you wanted? To explore other people?" Her face went through about 5 different emotions in rapid succession. Confusion, anger, realization, panic, and back to anger. "That's different," she insisted. "Jessica is someone we see all the time. She lives right here in our neighborhood. It would be weird and messy to get involved with her." "So your personal trainer Tyler is perfectly fine, but my neighbor Jessica isn't?" I asked. "That's interesting logic. It's not the same thing at all," she said, her voice rising. "Tyler is just casual. No emotions involved. And you know damn well that Jessica wouldn't be casual about anything with you. Because? I prompted, genuinely curious to hear her reasoning. Because she's had a thing for you forever. She'd want more than just a hookup. And that would complicate everything. Lisa was practically yelling at this point, completely losing her composure. I stayed perfectly calm throughout her meltdown. So your problem isn't that I might hook up with someone else. Your problem is that it might be someone who actually likes me and cares about me as a person. That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said, Lisa. You're completely fine with me having meaningless sex with random strangers, but God forbid I connect with someone who might actually give a damn about me. The fight continued for several more hours with her position constantly shifting and changing. First, Jessica was off limits because she was a neighbor. Then, it was because she was supposedly Lisa's enemy, which was news to me, since I'd never heard Lisa express anything more than mild jealousy about her. Then her argument changed to say that open marriages should be about experiencing completely new people, not exploring old attractions or crushes. I finally just walked out in the middle of one of her rants and went to the garage. I spent the rest of the day working on my project car, which gave me plenty of time to think clearly about what had just happened and what it meant for my long-term strategy. The next few weeks were incredibly tense around the house. Lisa continued her exploration and adventures with personal trainer Tyler and apparently some other guy she'd met at a bar downtown. Meanwhile, I was suddenly under constant surveillance. She'd randomly come home early from her dates when I was supposed to be off work, clearly checking up on me. She started going through my phone when she thought I was sleeping, and she even tried multiple times to get the password to my new email account. The irony was almost too much to handle. I gave her absolutely nothing suspicious to find, which only made her more paranoid and convinced that I was hiding something. It's like that old saying, the emptier the treasure chest, the more convinced someone becomes that you've hidden the real treasure somewhere else. It was classic projection. She was being sneaky and dishonest, so obviously I must be doing the same thing. My focus shifted entirely to self-improvement during this period. I was hitting the gym 6 days a week now, maintaining a consistent routine that was producing real results. I started reading books on finance and investment strategies during my long hauls, using the quiet highway time to educate myself about protecting and growing wealth. I also reconnected with old friends I'd lost touch with during my marriage, rediscovering hobbies and interests that had taken a backseat to domestic life. I was honestly in the best shape of my entire life. I'd dropped from 205 pounds down to 175, and I was bench pressing more weight than I had even in my 20s. There's something genuinely therapeutic about pushing heavy iron when your personal life feels completely out of control. You can't fix your marriage or change your wife's behavior, but you can absolutely add another plate to the bar and push yourself to new limits. The divorce lawyer, Kevin, had become something like an unofficial buddy during this time. I'd call him during the long, empty stretches of highway to update him on the latest developments in my marriage, and he'd consistently remind me to stay the course. Document everything. Don't engage with her drama, and just let her keep digging her own grave, he'd say. She's doing all the work for us. Then, Jessica decided to up the ante in this whole situation. She texted me one afternoon while I was on a route. Having a small BBQ this weekend, just a few neighbors. You should come by. Lisa's welcome too, of course. I showed Lisa the text message, thinking she might actually explode on the spot. Her reaction was immediate and intense. "We're not going," she snapped without hesitation. "She's just trying to get close to you, and I'm not going to enable that." "Maybe I want to go," I said mildly, keeping my tone casual. "Good food, hanging out with neighbors, normal social stuff that regular people do. While you ogle Jessica in her bikini? I don't think so." I found her response fascinating. "It's interesting how you get to go on actual dates with other men, but I can't even attend a neighborhood barbecue. That's different, and you know it." "Different how exactly?" She couldn't articulate her reasoning without admitting the obvious hypocrisy of her position. She just kept repeating that it was different, and that I was being deliberately obtuse about the situation. I decided to go to the barbecue anyway, despite her objections. Lisa flat out refused to come with me, which honestly made the whole thing easier. The event was exactly what Jessica had described. Just a few neighbors, good food, drinks, and completely innocent conversation. Jessica and I talked throughout the afternoon, but nothing inappropriate happened. It was just normal, friendly neighbor interaction. One of the other neighbors, this older guy named Walter, who'd been living in the neighborhood forever, pulled me aside at one point during the afternoon. "Heard about your situation," he said, handing me a fresh beer from the cooler. "Went through something pretty similar with my first wife back in 1995. Walter had this weathered, experienced face that looked like it had seen everything life could throw at a person. He was a Vietnam veteran, retired now, but still built like he could handle himself in any situation. He was the kind of guy who'd give you the shirt off his back if you needed it, but wouldn't hesitate to tell you when you were being an idiot about something important. "How did yours end?" I asked, genuinely curious about his experience. He chuckled and took a sip of his beer. "Caught her with my so-called best friend? Turns out the open part of the open marriage was just for her, not for me. Classic bait and switch situation." He paused for a moment, looking thoughtful. "Divorced her. Lost the house because I didn't know any better back then and didn't protect myself legally. But it turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to me. I married Helen 8 years later, and we've been together for 32 years now. Happiest I've ever been in my life. When I got home from the barbecue, Lisa was waiting for me with the intensity of someone who'd been pacing around the house for hours. Did you... excuse me?" she stammered, clearly struggling to form a coherent question. "Jessica, did you... don't lie to me." "Wait, why would that be a problem for you?" I asked calmly. "Didn't we open our marriage specifically so we could explore other people?" "Jessica is the problem. You know exactly what I mean." She was practically boiling with rage at this point. The irony was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Here she was, checking my clothes for perfume and interrogating me about my afternoon, while she had hickeys on her neck that she wasn't even bothering to try to hide anymore. "What the hell are you doing?" I asked, watching her literally sniff my shirt. "Are you seriously sniffing my clothes right now?" "Stop lying to me," she demanded, as if I was the one who had been dishonest throughout this entire arrangement. The next day, Brittany showed up at the house while Lisa was out with one of her guys. She just walked in without waiting for an invitation, like she owned the place. "Marcus," she announced, "we need to talk." "About what?" I asked, not bothering to get up from the couch where I was relaxing. "About what you're doing to Lisa. She's a complete mess because of your behavior." I actually laughed out loud. "What I'm doing to Lisa? That's rich, coming from you." "She wanted to open the relationship to improve things between you two," Brittany continued, sitting down uninvited. "To add some spice and excitement, not so you could chase after the first piece of ass that showed interest in you." "Interesting perspective," I said. "So Lisa cares about me, but she's just trying to find herself in other guys' beds?" "Don't be crude," Brittany snapped. "This was supposed to be a mutual growth experience for both of you." "Mutual?" I repeated slowly. "So why is it such a problem that I went to a neighborhood barbecue?" "Because your intentions weren't pure. You were trying to hurt Lisa deliberately. By eating a hamburger and talking to neighbors?" Brittany sighed dramatically, like she was dealing with a particularly slow child. "You're being deliberately thick about this. Lisa knows that Jessica has had a thing for you for years. Going to that barbecue was disrespectful to your marriage. And Lisa screwing personal trainer Tyler isn't disrespectful?" I asked. "That's different. That's just physical. There's no history or emotional connection there." It was the same bullshit argument, just coming from a different messenger this time. I stood up, having heard enough of this nonsense. "Brittany, with all due respect," which is absolutely none, "this is between me and Lisa. You encouraged her to find herself and open our marriage in the first place. Don't act all surprised when it doesn't play out exactly how you imagined it would." That night, Lisa tried a completely different approach with me. She came home wearing next to nothing and attempted to seduce me, putting on this whole performance like we were newlyweds again. I wasn't interested, and I made that clear. "What's wrong?" she asked when I didn't respond to her advances. "I thought we could reconnect tonight." "I'm not in the mood," I said simply. "Is this about her?" she demanded. And just like that, the seductive act vanished completely. "Are you punishing me?" "No, it's about me genuinely not being in the mood right now." "You're punishing me for exploring what you agreed to," she accused. "I agreed to exactly what you wanted, Lisa. This is the result." 5 months into our open marriage, I was meticulously documenting everything that was happening. Every fight about her ridiculous double standards, every time she came home late from being with another guy, every single dollar she spent from our joint account on her new lifestyle. Clothes, expensive dinners, hotel rooms for her romantic encounters. I had set up a separate email account that she didn't know about, and I was forwarding all our text conversations to it for safekeeping. I took screenshots of her social media posts where she'd share vague inspirational quotes about finding herself and exploring new connections, while in the same breath posting passive-aggressive content about trust issues and emotional betrayal, clearly referring to me and my supposed crimes. The cognitive dissonance was absolutely staggering to witness. The mental and emotional separation was now completely finished on my end. When I looked at Lisa, I saw a stranger. I no longer felt any emotional attachment to the woman I'd once planned to spend my life with. There was one particularly eye-opening night, about 4 months into this arrangement, when I came home unexpectedly early from a route that had been cut short due to mechanical issues. I walked into my own house to find Lisa and Brittany sitting at our kitchen table with a bottle of wine between them, clearly in the middle of planning what sounded like my financial execution. "You just need to figure out how to get your name on the deed somehow," Brittany was saying in a conspiratorial tone. "Or at least establish legally that you've contributed significantly to its value over the years." I quietly backed out of the room and then made a show of coming in loudly through the front door a minute later, giving them time to switch topics. They immediately started talking about something completely innocuous, but the damage was already done. I'd heard everything I needed to hear. These weren't just two sisters casually exploring modern relationship structures and personal growth. This was a coordinated, calculated effort to take me for everything I had worked for and built over the years. My lawyer, Kevin, was steadily building a solid case throughout all of this. In our state, adultery doesn't matter much legally when it comes to divorce proceedings, but financial irresponsibility and abandonment of marital duties definitely do matter. And Lisa was enthusiastically checking both of those boxes. She had quit her job without any plan, contributed absolutely nothing to our household or relationship, and was spending our money freely on her new lifestyle. Meanwhile, I was paying the mortgage on my premarital home, covering all the bills, and still handling all the maintenance and cleaning around the house. This was a textbook case of abandonment of marital duties, and Kevin was documenting every bit of it. But I continued to play it cool and didn't confront her about anything I'd overheard. I didn't rock the boat or create any dramatic scenes. I just quietly kept moving forward with my plans and preparations. Meanwhile, my physical transformation was continuing steadily, and my confidence was through the roof compared to where I'd started this journey. My clothes fit better, my posture had improved dramatically, and I carried myself with a new sense of self-assurance. Even my boss at work had commented on the positive changes he was seeing. "Whatever's going on with you these days," he said to me once, "keep doing it. You're looking good and working better than ever." Jessica had become an unexpected ally during this time, not romantically, but as someone who could see through Lisa's bullshit completely. "She was at the coffee shop yesterday," Jessica texted me during a haul to Orlando, "with some guy, acting all coupley and affectionate. Then she had the nerve to give me a dirty look when she saw me there, like I was the problem." Lisa was essentially living a double life at this point. She played the role of the devoted, exploring wife when it suited her narrative, and then switched to being a single party girl when she wanted to have fun. The hypocrisy was becoming more blatant and shameless by the week. I also took the precaution of installing security cameras in the common areas of the house: the living room, kitchen, and entryway. This was completely legal since it was my premarital property and I had every right to monitor my own home. I didn't tell Lisa about the cameras, and they captured some very interesting footage. The cameras recorded her bringing guys over to the house when I was away on long hauls, which was something she had specifically promised she wouldn't do when we were setting up the initial rules for our arrangement. "Our bed is our sacred space," she had claimed during those early conversations. "That should remain just between us." Apparently, that rule only applied to me. The cameras also caught her going through my desk drawers when she thought I wasn't around, checking my mail, and searching through my personal belongings for God knows what. She was probably looking for financial documents or evidence of my own supposed indiscretions that she could potentially use against me in some future confrontation. Most damning of all, I overheard and recorded her and Brittany bad-mouthing me extensively in my own living room. They were openly planning how to handle me and discussing what they were going to do with the house when the time comes, as if it would ever legally belong to her. "I just need to keep him pacified until I figure out my next move," Lisa said during one of these recorded conversations. "Tyler's fun and all, but he's not exactly husband material for the long term, and I need to be smart about this house situation. It's worth a fortune now with the market the way it is." They went on to discuss various strategies for how she might claim partial ownership of the house, despite it being my clear premarital asset. Brittany suggested that Lisa could claim she had contributed significantly to the house's upkeep and improvement over the years, which was absolutely laughable, given that she had never so much as changed a light bulb or painted a single wall. I immediately sent the recording to my lawyer. Kevin was practically gleeful when he heard it. "This is pure gold," he said over the phone. "Clear evidence of intent to defraud you of your assets. Keep recording everything you can." I did exactly that. Every conversation, every fight, every lie, every scheming session. All of it was documented, saved, and forwarded to my attorney. Meanwhile, my exit strategy was taking concrete shape behind the scenes. I had secured a storage unit across town where I gradually moved my most important possessions: family heirlooms, important documents, the small gun collection my grandfather had left me, and anything else that couldn't be easily replaced or that I didn't want to risk losing in the inevitable chaos of separation. I had also strategically transferred about 65% of our joint savings to my new separate account. It wasn't enough to be legally considered hiding assets, but it was definitely enough to ensure that I wouldn't be left completely high and dry if she tried to clean out our accounts in some fit of rage or desperation. I was carefully positioning myself and waiting for the right opportunity to make my move. I could feel that Lisa was getting close to a breaking point, and I wanted to be completely prepared when that moment arrived. 7 months into our open marriage experiment, things were rapidly reaching a critical breaking point. Lisa was getting increasingly sloppy with her behavior, staying out all night without any explanation, barely bothering to lie about where she had been or who she was with, and spending money like it was going out of style. I had strategically moved most of our joint funds to my separate account by this point, leaving just enough in the original account to cover our regular bills and basic household expenses, plus a healthy buffer that she could burn through with her endless brunches and hotel rendezvous. It was just enough to avoid raising any immediate suspicion while protecting the bulk of our savings. She hadn't even bothered to check the account balance once in months. She was too busy finding herself to look at mundane things like bank statements or question where the money for her lifestyle was actually coming from, since she obviously wasn't working or contributing anything financially. Then one night, everything changed completely. I came home from a 4-day haul to find Lisa and personal trainer Tyler sitting comfortably in our living room, drinking and looking like they owned the place. "Marcus," she said with that fake, overly bright tone she used when she knew she was doing something wrong. "You remember Tyler, right?" Tyler looked visibly uncomfortable but tried to play it cool and act like this was all perfectly normal. "Hey man, good to finally meet you properly," he said, attempting some kind of casual bro handshake. He was exactly what I had expected him to be. Mid-30s with an expensive haircut that probably cost more than most people spend on groceries. He had the kind of muscles that come from focusing exclusively on mirror muscles while completely skipping leg day. He was wearing one of those high-tech fabric shirts that cost $90, but are essentially just fancy polyester with a designer label. Seeing Tyler sitting there with his feet up on my couch was bad enough. But watching him pour my birthday Macallan whiskey into a plastic solo cup, that was the absolute final straw for me. I set down my duffel bag and stared at him. "You're drinking my Macallan." Lisa waved dismissively, like I was being petty about something trivial. "Don't be ridiculous, Marcus." "I bought that bottle," I said flatly. She hadn't bought it. It was a birthday gift from my brother that she had watched me open and carefully store just last month. But that wasn't even the real point I was trying to make. "You brought him to our house," I said, keeping my voice completely level. "That was literally one of your rules when we started this whole thing. No bringing people to our home." "I think we're past that now," she said with an eye roll, like I was some kind of dinosaur for remembering our agreements. "It's been 7 months, Marcus. The rules evolve and change as we grow." "Like they evolved about Jessica?" I asked pointedly. Tyler looked back and forth between us, clearly sensing the rising tension in the room. "Maybe I should go," he said, starting to stand up. "No, stay," Lisa insisted, putting her hand possessively on his arm. "Marcus is just being dramatic about everything. This is my house, too." Something inside me snapped completely at that moment. I was done playing games, done pretending, done with all of it. "Actually," I said with perfect calm, "it's not." "Excuse me?" Lisa's eyes narrowed dangerously. "This house isn't yours. It never was yours. I bought it before we were married. You've contributed absolutely nothing to the mortgage, the taxes, or the upkeep. Legally speaking, you're a tenant at best." Her face flushed bright red with anger. "How dare you? We're married. What's yours is mine." "That's not how premarital assets work in this state," I replied matter-of-factly. "But I'm sure Brittany already told you that when you two were discussing how to take my house when the time comes." Lisa's face went completely white. Tyler looked like he desperately wanted to disappear through the floor. "What are you talking about?" she stammered. But her voice had lost all its confidence. "I heard you," I said simply. "You and Brittany planning your next move, discussing how to claim ownership of my house, calling me a sucker who didn't know what was coming." "You were spying on me," she shrieked. "Not spying," I corrected. "Protecting my assets from someone who has explicitly stated her intention to steal them." Tyler stood up abruptly. I'm leaving. This is not what you told me it was, Lisa. She ignored him completely, staying focused entirely on me. You've been planning this all along. You agreed to the open marriage just to trap me somehow. I actually laughed out loud at the absurdity of that statement. Trap you into what exactly? Sleeping with other men? Having your sister over to plot against me? Bringing your boyfriend to my house to drink my whiskey? Yeah, what an elaborate trap I set. Tyler was already heading for the door, smart enough to recognize a complete shit show when he saw one. Don't you dare leave, Lisa yelled after him. This isn't about you. But he was already gone, at least having the good sense to extract himself from whatever this mess had become. Lisa rounded on me with pure fury in her eyes. You've ruined everything. This was working fine until you got all possessive and weird about everything. Working fine for who exactly? I shot back. You get to sleep around while I work 65 hours a week to pay for everything. You get to bring men to my house while I can't even talk to a neighbor without being accused of cheating. That's your definition of working fine? I never cheated, she protested. We had an agreement. An agreement that you unilaterally changed whenever it suited you, I replied. She tried switching to a different angle, suddenly becoming teary-eyed and vulnerable. I just needed to find myself, Marcus. I was lost and confused. This was never about not loving you. Save it, I said coldly. I've watched you find yourself for 7 months now. Turns out what you found was that you like screwing other guys while having a stable provider at home to pay for everything. Well, that arrangement is officially over. What does that mean? She asked, her voice suddenly becoming small and wary. It means I'm done. I've been done for months, actually. I've just been waiting for the right time. The right time for what? Her voice had gone even smaller. To end this farce of a marriage. She stared at me for a long moment, and then her expression hardened completely. Fine. If that's what you want, then fine. But don't think I'm walking away with nothing. I know my rights. Half of this house is mine, half of your pension, half of everything you have. I smiled calmly. We'll see about that. I crashed at a motel that night, needing space to think and plan my next moves. By morning, I was on the phone with my lawyer, Kevin, ready to pull the trigger on everything we'd been preparing. It's time, I told him. She brought one of her guys to my house last night drinking my stuff, acting like he owned the place. Kevin was ready for this moment. The papers had been prepared for weeks, everything organized to maximize my legal position and minimize her potential claims. Let's do this, he said. I headed back to the house later that morning to grab another round of clothes before I hit the road for my next scheduled haul. Lisa was waiting for me like she had been standing there all night. Red, puffy eyes, messy hair pulled back in a defeated-looking bun. And of course, Brittany was lurking nearby like her personal attack dog and strategic advisor. Suddenly, they were both all about being civil and reasonable. Their words, not mine. Lisa wanted to discuss next steps and how we could handle this amicably. Brittany had apparently spent the night researching divorce attorneys and was already positioning herself as Lisa's legal strategist. The plan now, according to them, was to handle everything amicably and fairly. Brittany had the absolute nerve to suggest that Lisa probably deserved at least 70 to 75% of everything, since I was clearly the one breaking our marriage contract by ending things. It was pure delusion with absolutely zero legal basis, but they both nodded along like this was established law that everyone agreed on. Lisa acted like she automatically deserved a significant cut of everything I had worked for and built. She claimed she had contributed to our marriage by being emotionally supportive and present, whatever that was supposed to mean in practical terms. Brittany doubled down on this nonsense, saying that Lisa had been the backbone of the household and deserved to be compensated accordingly. I didn't even bother arguing with them or pointing out the obvious flaws in their reasoning. There was no point in engaging with that level of delusion. The reality was simple and undeniable. Lisa hadn't cleaned anything, hadn't worked or earned money, hadn't maintained a single thing around the house. Every time I came home from a multi-day haul, the place looked like a crime scene. I had handled all the cleaning, all the bills, all the yard work, literally everything that kept our household functioning. Name one useful thing you've done in the last 7 months, I said calmly, genuinely curious to hear her answer. Complete silence. She couldn't name a single constructive thing she had accomplished in the last 7 months. Her entire defense consisted of vague nonsense about emotional labor and some meaningless concepts about presence and positive energy. Here's what's going to happen, I said, zipping up my duffel bag. I'm going on my scheduled haul as planned. When I get back in 4 days, I expect you to be making arrangements to move out. What? I'm not going anywhere, Lisa declared defiantly, This is my home too. It's not, and I think you'll find that the courts completely agree with me on that. We'll see about that, Brittany said smugly. My friend Carol is a divorce attorney, and she says wives get half of everything regardless of whose name is on the deed. Your friend Carol sounds like a pretty shitty attorney, I replied. But hey, please hire her. That should make this whole process much easier for me. I left them standing there, both still completely convinced that they held all the cards in this situation. The delusion was almost sad to witness. 4 days on the road gave me plenty of time to prepare mentally for what was coming next. My lawyer Kevin filed the divorce papers, detailing Lisa's complete abandonment of marital duties, her financial irresponsibility, and her explicit statements of intent to defraud me of my premarital assets. He also filed for an emergency hearing regarding occupancy of the house, using the security footage of Lisa bringing another man into our home as evidence that her continued presence would be detrimental to my well-being and property. When I returned from my haul, Lisa and Brittany were waiting for me with a document of their own, a handwritten list of demands that they had apparently spent the entire 4 days crafting. The list included: Marcus acknowledges 55% ownership of the house to Lisa, pays spousal support of $3,500 per month for 6 years, transfers 55% of his 401k retirement account to Lisa, covers all of Lisa's legal fees throughout the divorce process, provides health insurance coverage for Lisa for 4 years, post-divorce. This is our starting position, Brittany announced like she was some hotshot negotiator conducting a major business deal. We're willing to be reasonable if you are. I scanned their ridiculous list and handed it back to them without hesitation. Yeah, nope. What do you mean, no? Lisa asked, genuinely confused. That's not how any of this works, Brittany snapped, her face reddening with indignation. You think you can just throw Lisa away after she gave you the best years of her life? You're absolutely pathetic. Actually, this is exactly how it works, I said calmly. I pulled out my own envelope and handed it directly to Lisa. You've been served. She opened the official documents with shaking hands, her face going from confusion to shock to pure fury as she read through the legal papers. What is this bullshit? She demanded. These are all lies. They're all thoroughly documented, I said matter-of-factly. Every single claim is backed up with evidence. Her voice went up an entire octave. You've been recording me? You've been spying on me this whole time? Perfectly legal in this state and very informative, I replied. Especially your conversations with Brittany about taking my house when the time comes. Brittany grabbed the papers from Lisa's hands, scanning them frantically. This won't hold up in court. The house is marital property regardless of when you bought it. Not in this state, and not with a documented history of financial separation and her contribution of exactly $0 to its mortgage or upkeep. You can't kick me out of my own home. Lisa was nearly hysterical at this point. It never was your home, and yes, I can and I will. I'll fight this, she threatened desperately. I'll tell everyone what you did, how you tricked me into this whole situation. Go ahead, I said with complete indifference. She started crying then. Those manipulative, calculated sobs that she had perfected over the years. The same ones that used to make me back down, apologize, and give in to whatever she wanted. But not anymore. Those tears had lost all their power over me. You have until tomorrow afternoon to pack your essential belongings, I said firmly. The court will likely grant you a few weeks to remove the rest of your stuff, but it will be supervised. This isn't over, Brittany hissed, putting her arm protectively around Lisa's shoulders. You're absolutely right, I agreed. But it's much closer to being over than you think. The judge ruled in my favor, exactly as Kevin had predicted. The evidence we had compiled was completely overwhelming and undeniable. Lisa was granted 35 days to remove her belongings from the house, but she could not continue living there during the divorce proceedings. She ended up moving in with Brittany, who very quickly grew tired of having her sister as a permanent house guest. Turns out that living with someone who contributes absolutely nothing to the household isn't quite as fun when you're the one footing all the bills. Within 3 weeks of Lisa moving in, they were fighting constantly and loudly. My lawyer had connected me with a financial advisor who helped me protect my assets throughout the divorce process. We meticulously documented every penny I had earned over the years, every investment I had made, and every bill I had paid during our marriage. We created an absolutely ironclad case demonstrating that Lisa had no legitimate legal claim to any of it. Lisa's lawyer turned out not to be Brittany's friend Carol, but rather a court-appointed attorney. Apparently, Carol had reviewed all the evidence we had compiled and declined to take the case entirely. The new attorney took one look at the mountain of documentation and advised Lisa to accept the settlement offer that my lawyer had prepared. The final settlement terms were straightforward. The house remains mine as a premarital asset. I keep my 401k and pension completely intact. I pay no spousal support whatsoever. She keeps her car, which was titled in her name. She receives a one-time payment of $12,000. It was far less than she had wanted or expected, but honestly more than she deserved given her behavior. She fought the settlement initially, still convinced somehow that she could get half of everything I owned. But as the evidence continued to mount and her legal position kept weakening, she eventually gave up and accepted reality. The divorce was finalized 5 months later. On the day she came to collect the last of her belongings from the house, she tried one final Hail Mary attempt to change my mind. Her makeup was smudged, she looked like she hadn't slept properly in a week, and her hair was pulled back in that messy, "I'm having a complete breakdown" bun that had become her signature look. Word around the neighborhood was that Brittany had finally kicked her out after months of nonstop fighting. Personal trainer Tyler had apparently ghosted her completely once the drama got too intense for his liking. "I still love you, Marcus," she said, standing in the entryway of what was now firmly and legally my house again. "We could start over fresh. I've learned my lesson from all of this." I just looked at her calmly. "No, Lisa. That's not fair," she protested. "I made a mistake, but everyone deserves a second chance." "Goodbye, Lisa," I said simply, closing the door as she walked away for the final time. That was 8 months ago now. The divorce has been completely finalized, and I'm officially a free man again. I kept everything that actually mattered to me: my house, my truck, and most importantly, my dignity and self-respect. I ran into Jessica at the hardware store just last week. We ended up getting coffee afterward. Nothing serious or romantic, just good conversation between neighbors. She asked if I felt ready to start dating again. I told her that I'm deliberately staying single for now, focusing on myself and my own happiness. Life goes on, and honestly, it's better than it was before all of this started. Sometimes I think about how different things might have been if Lisa had just been honest about what she wanted from the beginning, or if she had put even a fraction of the energy she spent on other guys into actually working on our marriage. But then I remember that people show you who they really are when they think they can get away with it. Lisa showed me exactly who she was: someone willing to lie, cheat, and scheme to take everything I had worked for while contributing nothing in return. I'm grateful that I learned the truth before I wasted any more years of my life. The house feels like mine again. I've been making improvements, working on projects I had put off for years. My Mustang restoration is almost finished. I'm in the best shape of my life, both physically and financially. Most importantly, I wake up every morning in my own home, knowing that everything I see around me is something I earned and built myself. No one can take that away from me, and no one is plotting behind my back to steal it from me. That feeling of security and peace of mind, that's worth more than any relationship built on lies and manipulation ever could be.